Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strykers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strykers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60.
What is good?
It's all good, Nina.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Soccer in 60. I'm your girl, Nina Kiefer, and of course, joining me today, my friend Tim Colas. But I had to throw back the original welcome, if you will, that J.R. Liebert of Defenders of the Bank always provides when he starts his podcast. We're live on KMET 1490 AM and 98.1 FM in much of the Inland Empire, KMET app, KMET1490.com, and of course, the Empire Strykers Instagram and YouTube, and of course, on demand on all the major platforms. J.R. Liebert, the Scarf, is joining us today. We also have a fun host coming on later for a quick interview, and we'll be joined by Kevin Baxter. But Jay, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. Good morning. I got school to teach in like 35 minutes, but they said I get to talk about soccer this morning. That's what I love to do. Really excited to be here. First time on Soccer in 60, but very excited to join you guys. Tim, it's good to see you on the other side too, my friend.
Good to see you, JR, man. Thanks for joining us today and taking care of us on our show this afternoon. I love it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
All right. So JR always starts Defenders of the Bank podcast by going, "What is good?" So I had to throw it out that way. And like I said, Kevin Baxter of the LA Times is our interview today. We're recording this before school, as JR hinted at, so you'll be hearing it this afternoon, but we're recording at a bright and early 7 a.m. despite the complaints of our sound engineer. And we're excited. We got a lot to talk about. We've got lots of recaps, lots of previews to come from the teams throughout LA. So before we do that, though, we got to pay the bills. Experience the thrill of game day with Omnitrans in partnership with the Strykers. Be in the heart of the action at Toyota Arena and let us take care of the ride. Heading to the game, hop aboard Omnitrans for a seamless journey to Toyota Arena. Simply download the Transit app and catch your bus to enjoy a stress-free trip to cheer on the Strykers. All right, boys, let's talk LAFC.
Let's do it. Let's get into it in big time. There's not much really to talk about the New York City FC game, is there? I mean, there was only about 4 minutes of action, right?
Listen, yeah. For most of the first part of our season, we've turned into a Serie A team. It's 1-0 in a cloud of dust. So very, very little talk about a lot of these wins. But finally, LAFC kind of getting off the schneid and getting their engine going in this last match against Columbus of all clubs.
Yeah.
I mean, against the Columbus team, 3-0, right? That's a great result against a very good Columbus Crew team.
Yeah, look, I don't know what's more impressive, the nothing on the score sheet side or putting up 3, because I don't know that we thought we had 3 in us. But for a club that beat us 5-1 the last time they were in that building, PTSD all across BMO Stadium. I mean, it was an incredible result at the perfect time for LAFC.
You almost had to put $1 in the box for calling it the bank.
Yeah, I think more impressive is the 3 goals. I mean, you get a brace from Bouanga, and then you get, who a recent guest on the show, Nate Ordaz, was, yep. And he just rips that ball. I mean, that was a great volley, really nicely done. And I think more impressive is the 3 number on the LAFC number.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, when you look up and down the lineup for Columbus Crew, right, they don't have that talisman that strikes fear into your heart like they had with Cucho Hernandez and before that Lucas Zelarayan. So looking up and down the roster, I kind of expected LAFC, especially with the run of form that they've been in defensively, to hold that 0, especially at home. But I think you're right. Getting Denis Bouanga going is certainly the most important thing. Unfortunately for both Steve and Nathan Ordaz, they both ripped on Nate at the end of the game, saying that moment when he scored the goal was like the only good moment for him in the match. So I know they've still got a lot to build on. But look, with Cengiz Ünder coming in, he landed in Los Angeles yesterday. They're going to have that another DP striker to kind of get things going, to take the pressure off of Denis Bouanga. But look, it was our buddy Josh Gross who pointed this out in the press conference last year. First 4 games of the season last year, no goals for Denis Bouanga and then scored a brace in the 5th. This year, same exact thing. While we'd like to need to get started a little bit earlier, what we're doing now is we're not even letting anything through, not just shots on target, but shots in general. The defense has been incredible. I mean, it's been an interesting turnaround that Steve Cherundolo has turned this team into a team that kind of looks and plays defensively like he used to for Hannover 96.
So I want to dive into Nate Ordaz a little bit here, because one of the things we didn't get to talk to Kevin Baxter about was the development of Nate, because he's not consistent yet. And within that, if we are bringing in another DP, what does that do for his development? Is he still going to get the reps he needs?
Yeah, look, the nice part is we have LAFC 2, and I know Nate does not want to have to go down to LAFC 2 if he doesn't have to, but there is a place for him to develop. But I do think with Cengiz Ünder coming in, with Jeremy Abobasi, and look, they've put in a lot of money and time and development into David Martinez, who came in as maybe the highest touted Venezuelan prospect of all time, people were saying. You're absolutely right. I think it's Nate that might get the squeeze a little bit. But I have to be honest, since we talked about this on our podcast last night, if he keeps scoring goals the way he has, how can you keep him off the pitch? He is a straight line goal scorer. What David Martinez will do is he'll take on a couple defenders. He has incredible skills, incredible technique. But Nate's way more of a straight line goal scorer, but he's doing his job as a goal scorer. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what Steve Cherundolo does with that.
All right. Talking about what Steve Cherundolo is going to do, let's look ahead. LAFC is going to go on the road to Seattle this Saturday and then away to Columbus. Let's talk about Seattle first. Turf.
Turf. Bad turf.
Yep.
Yeah, turf, and it's going to be cold, and it's a place where, we play okay sometimes. I don't love our club on turf, but to be perfectly honest, we rested a ton of guys in that Columbus match. Somewhat surprisingly, Olivier Giroud did not take off the practice penny, so did not come into that match. So I think Olivier Giroud will be ready to go. And look, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think you're going to see names potentially like Adam Saldana and Jude Terry and Adrian Wabowo. We're going to really stretch the lineup rotation in this one because we have played a ton of matches. And I firmly believe, especially this early in the season, as we've been able to pile up results at home in Major League Soccer, we may, I don't know if the right word is punt, but we may field, as look, Steve likes to say, the most competitive 11 for that day. I think it'll look very different than the competitive 11 that we show just 3 days later in Columbus, because that's where we're pushing all our chips into the table right now.
Yeah, talking about 3 days later going to Columbus. I mean, the last time we were in Columbus, also not the most friendly for us.
I mean, look, you can't expect hospitality from the Columbus Crew. They tried to say that they're the original black and gold, even though the Pantone number is clearly yellow. But look, they had an MLS Cup final to try and win in 2023, and they did. But what we did was borrow Yaboa now. And so we've got one of the goal scorers from that MLS Cup final. And again, they just don't strike fear into the hearts of clubs, I think, right now, without a player like Cucho Hernandez on that roster.
And
and I think the big thing with Columbus is you said it, and they don't have that guy. Like you just mentioned, Nate Ordaz, straight line striker, right? He's a pure striker. He's just a goal scorer, and that's great. He'll develop more and things like that. But Columbus just doesn't have that. So again, the best 11 for that day, I think, is really the key wording here.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do again is what we've seen is lean on the back line. We've got, between Nkosi Tafari, who's come in and played excellently, but Marlon and Eddie Segura and Aaron Long. And obviously we know what we get from players like Ryan Hollingshead and Sergi Palencia. But even what we saw in limited minutes from Artem Smolyakov, the new Ukrainian kid that came over, I think what we are going to do is rely very, very heavily on the back line. We saw that we could absorb possession, 68% possession for Columbus in that last match, and still very little even on target. So I think LAFC is going to be okay defensively, but it might be 0-0 by the end of it. We'll see.
Yeah, LAFC definitely relying on winning by defense, almost that Italian style soccer, throwing it back. And with that, Columbus does need 4-0 in order for them to move on. This is on aggregate, so they can't just score 1 and call it a day. They need 4, which is pretty huge. So with that, we're going to queue up this interview with Kevin Baxter. And unfortunately, Tim's internet cuts out about 10 seconds into the interview. So just mind that as he drops off quickly. And then Kevin and I get to chat a little bit about LAFC, LA Galaxy, and Angel City. Let's go to Nina and Kevin. Our guest today joins us a second time, so hopefully that means he didn't have a horrible experience for the first time around. A giant of sports journalism, he writes about soccer and hockey for the LA Times and has covered 7 World Cups, 5 Olympic Games, 6 World Series, and a Super Bowl. And as if that wasn't enough, he has even contributed to not 1, not 2, but 3 Pulitzer Prize-winning series at the Times and Miami Herald. Even though, as he told us last time, those had nothing to do with soccer, we're so thrilled to have with us one of the foremost experts on LAFC, the LA Galaxy, and Angel City, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Well, the check cleared, so I thought I'd come back.
Perfect. That's what we love to hear. We got a lot of questions for you today, so we're going to dive right into it with LAFC. When we spoke to you back in January, you said you weren't worried about the state of the roster and that Steve Cherundolo was still absolutely the right man for the job after Tuesday's game. I think it's hard to argue that you were wrong. LAFC started the season mostly defending and grinding out results, but Tuesday felt like a statement game. How would you rate the performance against Columbus, and where do you see the team in its quest to win 3 trophies in 2025?
If we had had this conversation, the one we had then, now, I might feel differently because I thought Luis O'Brien was coming back, and when we spoke, Bogues was still part of the team. So if we had had that conversation then and Bogues wasn't there and Luis O'Brien wasn't there, I might have had a different take on everything. But obviously, I would have been proven wrong because they are really hot right now. 3 goals against Columbus. It was the first time they've beaten Columbus since Wilfred Nancy took over as coach. Remember, they lost to them in an MLS Cup final in 2023. They lost to them last year in the League's Cup final. Now they beat them in a tournament. They haven't advanced yet. They go to Columbus leading that series 3-0. Columbus does not have an away goal. So Columbus would have to win that game 4-0 to advance, 3-0 just to go to penalty kicks. So LAFC in a good position, not only on the field, but they've had now 4 straight clean sheets, 370 scoreless minutes, in which during that time, Hugo Lloris has had to make 6 saves total. They finally got some scoring punch going. They had won the previous 3 games 1-0. Won that game against Columbus 3-0. Denny Bouanga, people were worried about him a little bit. Don't worry about him. Last year, he didn't score in the first 4 games and then got a brace in the 5th game. Guess what he did this year? He didn't score in the first 4 games. He got a brace in the 5th game, went on to lead the team in scoring, had more than 20 goals again. So everything is looking good for LAFC. I don't know about winning 3 finals. That seems like a really tough chore. Maybe getting back to MLS Cup final is something that they'd be happy with. But, and they're about to get better because this name I'm going to butcher. I butcher all names. Cengiz Ünder, is that how you say it? The Turkish player who's now on his way, designated player on loan to add to some of the scoring for them. Mark Delgado playing terrific in the midfield. And Steve Cherundolo said something really interesting last night. He said, we can win a lot of these games defensively. We can win these 1-0 games. In this case, 3-0. We can win with our defense, but we're not going to do that all year long. It's going to change at some point. We're going to ride this as long as we can. And then when we have to score goals in bunches, it looks like they're going to be able to do that.
LAFC next takes on Seattle Sounders on the road, a team that has gotten mixed reviews to start the season. What do you expect to see in that game? And what are the keys to a successful result for the Black and Gold?
Well, I actually think Seattle is the best team in the Western Conference and maybe the most improved team. I think they're very good. And this game will be on turf. That's always a problem for visiting teams. We saw that with the Galaxy, which we'll talk about in a minute, when they went to Vancouver. We see it when teams go to Portland. Not only are these the turf fields in the Western Conference, but they are bad turf fields. They are very bad turf fields. So that is something Steve Cherundolo is going to have to think about. He also has a game, midweek in Columbus to advance to the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. By the way, if they make the quarterfinals, guess who they're likely to play? Inter Miami and Messi coming to LA for one of those 2 legs. So Cherundolo has a little bit of a difficult decision. He knows he has that big lead and probably doesn't have to play all of his horses. But how would you like to be the coach that decides to rest your guys for that game and you wind up losing 4-0? So I think he probably is going to save some players for Columbus. We'll see. There's enough young players that they can go both ways. You get, and they have some really good players that are playing well right now. So depth shouldn't be an issue. John Thornton said at the beginning of the season that this is the best two deep team he's had. We'll see if that's actually true. I think right now, there are 32 MLS games to go, correct? And There is one more game in the Champions Cup to get to the quarterfinals. I think that's where Steve Toronto puts his eggs all in that basket. So getting out of Seattle with a draw would be a good result. Not having anyone injured would be a terrific result. I don't know that I expect them to go all in on this game. I don't know if Seattle's going to go all in on this game either. It's still early in the season, but it's a big test because, again, I think Seattle is the most improved team in the Western Conference. They're my favorite to win the Western Conference title, not to go to MLS Cup. We know when we get to the playoffs, everything changes. But at the end of 34 games, I think they're going to have the best record in the Western Conference.
You think they're taking the Supporters Shield?
No. I think that'll, again, come out of the East. We don't know who yet, but there's some pretty good teams over in the East.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to LA Galaxy. Obviously, we're dealing with a very different narrative over in Carson, California, as the club is 0-2 in its 2025 MLS campaign and has given us some reason for concern after watching them lose 1-0 in Costa Rica. I'd like to get your take on the state of the team. What do you see from them in that match, and how close are you to hitting the panic button?
I'm not close to hitting the panic button yet. And here's why, because again, the playoffs, Seattle, if they win the conference, that doesn't mean anything. They go into playoffs 0-0, just like everybody else. The Galaxy are going to make the playoffs. I don't really, have much doubt about that. And when they do make the playoffs, they're going to be back with Ricky Puig. He should be back probably mid to late summer. That's like trading for one of the best players in the league late in the season. He's not going to be banged up. He's not going to be tired. He's going to change the way they play. He's going to be running at defenses that have played 25 games already. So I think that's a game changer for the Galaxy, and I think it gives them a chance to go deep in the playoffs. Hopefully, for the Galaxy, they finish in the top 4 and get the home field advantage. If not, I still think they'll be a dangerous team. But where they are right now, again, not the panic button, but you have to be a little bit concerned. They have 5 starters that are injured, including 2 that are, 3 now that are long-term. Luis Sanabria has a broken collarbone. We have Joseph Paintsil still dealing with that quad problem, and then Ricky Puig is out with the ACL. So 3 of your 5 starters are out long-term. It's changed the way they play. They don't have the depth that LAFC has. So that's caused some problems. They've scored 1 goal in 3 games. They lost at home to San Diego, which I don't think is a good team. They lost on the road to Vancouver 2-1. Vancouver's a very good team, and they were playing on turf, so give them a little bit of break there. And then there are some extenuating circumstances. They flew 10 hours from Vancouver to Costa Rica, found out that Herediano was not going to play in their home stadium. They were going to play 45 minutes outside Costa Rica. So it was a long drive for training on Tuesday, a longer drive for the game on Wednesday. They lost 1-0. Again, didn't score, been blanked in 2 of their 3 games. Nobody got hurt. So that's a good sign for the Galaxy. They'll come back. They'll play St. Louis at home on Sunday, and then they need to beat Herediano at home by at least 2 goals to advance.
Yeah, 45 minutes outside of San Jose is not fun. I mean, I've been down to Costa Rica, and that is a windy road, and we drove there when LAFC was down there. But, you're really, when we talk about all the injuries LA Galaxy has, it's making me think about Angel City, but we'll get to them in a minute.
Well, one more thing about the Galaxy, too. This could be, you talk about the long-term injuries. Another thing that could be brewing is a goalkeeper controversy, because they used, Mikovic in the first three games. Excuse me, they used in the first 3 games, or first 2 games, and he gave up 2 goals in each of those games. Played well, made some big saves, gave up some goals he shouldn't have given up. Made a huge mistake against San Diego, which cost him a goal. And everyone's wondering what happened to John McCarthy. He was the starter last year. Remember, at LAFC, he won the MVP in the MLS Cup. So the whole idea when he came over was Mikovic, a young Serbian kid, was going to be the starter. McCarthy was going to be his tutor. McCarthy wound up playing all last season. They won MLS Cup. This is Mikovic's year, and McCarthy was asked to step aside. Well, Mikovic gets up to a poor start again, giving up 4 goals, making a couple of mistakes. McCarthy was very good in Herediano tonight. We thought that he would start in Costa Rica just because it's an international game. There's a lot of stuff going on around it. He's the veteran. Figured he would start. Not only did he start, he made 4 saves. He made a couple of great saves. He did give up a goal. Really wasn't his fault. His defense didn't help him out a lot, but he played very well, made some spectacular saves. And now you got to wonder, is he going to be the starter? Is Greg Vanny going to think about that? I don't think he is yet. This would totally destroy a young player like Mikovic if he took him out now. But I don't know how if he's on a long leash right now. If the Galaxy continue to sputter to score, they're going to need some guy in goal that can shut teams out. And right now, that's McCarthy.
Yeah, they're definitely going to need to take a look at that. But I do think you need to give keepers a little time to acclimate and to get used to the new systems and to get used to their communication with the center backs and to, feel themselves out. So we'll see how it plays out. Let's take a look ahead. Galaxy now is going to take on St. Louis, a club that's kicked off the season with consecutive clean sheets. How tough do you think it will be for Greg Vanney's team to get the offense finally clicking on Sunday? And how worried will you be if they can't come through with their first win?
Well, if they don't win this game at home, you remember they didn't lose at Dignity Health Sports Park all of last season.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already lost their first game this year. They didn't lose 2 in a row anywhere ever last season. They've lost 3 in a row now. That hasn't happened since late in the 2023 season. So, again, not pushing the panic button, but they need some good news. And one of the things that we've been talking about with the Galaxy is the guys that are healthy are trying to step up and take over guys like Winder, a new player that they got in from USL Championship. Some of their younger players, Ruben Ramos Jr., Christian Ramirez, a veteran, came over, hasn't scored a goal yet. There's our guys that are pressing, that are trying to step up and fill in for the missing players, and they're not being rewarded. And that gets very, very frustrating. So forget the standings, forget the table and getting 3 points in the table. I just think the Galaxy need to be rewarded for this effort. The St. Louis game is going to be tough. The Galaxy are not showing much offense, and here's a team that hasn't given up a goal yet. So, we could wind up seeing a scoreless tie, or the game could be very well decided on a mistake. That's not the kind of game the Galaxy want to get into, unless, of course, the mistake goes their way, and then all of a sudden they're looking at it and saying, "Hey, luck is on our side now. Maybe this is how we turn it around." But they need some good news. They need to play a good game. They need to get a result above anything else. They need to at least get a point out of this game, just to feel like they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, winning on a mistake is not what you expect from your defending champions. So the fan base definitely deserves more, and I'm sure the players are feeling the pressure there. But let's transition over to Angel City. Back in January, you said that Angel City was a mess, which, yeah. Since then, the club has made a few player moves, brought in Mark Parsons as sporting director, Laura Flynn as chief revenue officer, and Sam Lady as interim head coach. Of course, we still don't have a permanent head coach, and we've been told that may not happen until the summer. So tell us, where do we stand now? Is Angel City still a mess?
They're less of a mess. They've made some good moves. Salvi King coming in as on defense and signing a long-term contract. The Sam Lady thing is very interesting. And Mark Parsons, as you said, has talked about that and said, we'd rather have the right person than a person right now. Willow Bay, who is the new majority owner, has really, really studied soccer. She's really dove deep into this, trying to learn about the game and trying to be an asset to her front office. And I talked to one of the owners whose name I can't mention, but the owner told me that he had a conversation with Willow Bay, and she was like, we can't start the season without a coach. And he said, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Sam Lady will be fine. Just relax. We're going to get the right person. We're not going to get, a person right now. And he pointed to the example of Minnesota United, who started with an interim coach and going to the playoffs. So Willow Bay is learning a little bit about being patient. I think Mark Parsons is sort of the right guy in the right position. But here's what I worry about. The roster construction worries me a little bit. They have added some good players now. The roster this year right now is much better than last year, and they're unbeaten in the preseason. They went to Coachella and they beat Portland and they drew Seattle, but they have 6 players 21 and under. Okay, and 4 of them are teenagers, and one of them, Savvy King, was a teenager 3 weeks ago or a month ago. So that's a very young team. But they also have 7 players that are over 30. So you look at that team, you have a situation where Christian Press was at Stanford when 2 of her teammates were born. And so you look at that and you say, well, okay, the older players are going to bring the younger players along. They're going to tutor them. Yeah, that's the way it traditionally works. But again, Christian Press was in college at Stanford when a couple of her teammates were born. How do they even talk to one another? How do they have a conversation? How do they relate? So I wonder a little bit about that. Christian Press was the first signing of this team, a local player coming back to give a boost to NWSL. Didn't work out. She got injured, didn't start a game, I don't think, last year. Maybe started at the end of the season, but didn't play much. She's come back for 1 year. That surprised me, to be honest. She has her podcast with Tobin Heath, which is amazing. And that's definitely where she's going to go. And I really thought she was going to put a lot more of her attention on that. She's decided to come back and play one more year. I think she wants to go out on her own terms. But I do wonder a little bit about how much she's going to play, how committed she is to this team. We'll find that out when the season starts. And that's not a knock on her. That's just a knock on, she's 37 and she has other things going on. She's not going to a World Cup again. So, we'll see what happens. I do think that age discrepancy on this team is a little bit wide. It could be a real benefit. Both those, both age groups, they could really help bring each other along. I mean, some of those young players could serve as tech support for Christian Press and Sydney Leroux and some of the older players. So we'll see how that goes. But that's a really interesting dynamic in that, Angel City is both one of the youngest teams and one of the oldest teams in the league at the same time.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It definitely feels like a send-off for Kristen Press, just bringing her back for 1 year and give her that retirement that, quite frankly, she's earned. I don't know if she's earned it because of her time with Angel City necessarily, but it'll be nice to have her have that moment to see her off.
No, and she's going to the Hall of Fame. She's going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, let's just wipe out the Angel City career, which has been disappointing because of the injury. And remember, it just wasn't an injury. She had to go, I think, had 4 surgeries after the injury because it just didn't heal right. So she's going to the Hall of Fame. You're right. It's a send-off and maybe a little bit of a passing of the torch if Alyssa Thompson develops into the player we think she's going to be. All of a sudden, she becomes the headline player from Southern California with Alex Morgan now retired. So, yeah, it's a big year for Christian Press in a lot of ways, maybe not on the field, but in her career, which is going to end in the Hall of Fame. It's a big season, and the best way to send her off is with the team's first ever playoff win. They're still looking for that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. All right, final question. We know you were at the ribbon cutting for Angel City's Performance Center on the campus of Cal Lutheran in Thousand Oaks. In your view, besides the obvious advantages a facility like that offers in terms of players' physical preparedness, what do you think the significance of the Performance Center is in terms of attracting top talent, but also in terms of the progression of the women's game as a whole?
Oh, it's huge. It's you cannot overstate it. And you nailed it with, how it's going to help attract players. And that's something that Christian Press and a lot of the other women talked about at the ribbon cutting is that, NWSL is the first league in the United States, professional league, to go without a draft. And they have, free agency now. It extends, well beyond the normal suspects in free agency in other leagues. What that means is players have a lot of ability to move and go from team to team. They can go to where they want. They can live in the city they want to live in. They can play for the team they want to play in, the coach. Angel City does not have a culture of winning right now to brag about. That could change this year. I think Mark Parsons is a good hire. What they do have is Southern California, the weather. They have some really good players on the team. Who wouldn't want to play with some of the players on this team, right? But the Performance Center, this was a Performance Center that was recently used until Angel City took it over by the LA Rams, a Super Bowl champion NFL team. The coach's office now is actually a play area for the players' kids, which I think is kind of cute. But they went in, a $1 million reboot, fixed the thing up. The weight room is incredible. The locker room that they have, if you haven't seen pictures of that, go look at
it's beautiful.
Google that. It's incredible. And so when players are thinking about where they want to go and they come and they tour this place, it's a no-brainer. This is where they want to come. And Angel City needs, with this new player movement thing going on in NWSL, Angel City has to sell itself. And this is really going to do a good job on that. And then, as you said, it starts an arms race because we know Portland is building a Performance Center. Kansas City has a beautiful one. Everybody else is going to have to match this. Imagine if you're Louisville, nothing with Louisville. And I've heard some really good things about Louisville and the team. And one thing I heard too is if you're offered, I don't know, 60, 70,000 to go play in LA, doesn't go very far. You're offered that in Louisville and you can get a pretty good place. Yeah. So there's some advantages these teams have, but imagine you're trying to recruit someone to Louisville and they don't have a facility like this. I mean, it's going to be difficult for some of these teams to sign players without these facilities when everyone can go and see what Angel City has. And you know what it says too? It says, the same thing the team has been telling people is we're doing everything we can to support you and make you the best player that you can be. And when they say that, and then they point to the weight room, which was used by an NFL Super Bowl champion, all of a sudden you believe it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kevin, for lending us your expertise. We know you're very busy, so we appreciate you being with us today. This is Soccer in 60, and we're going to continue right now with the next bit of news. Kevin is so fun to talk to. He's incredibly insightful. I really do enjoy my time with him. He's a little long-winded at times, but it's all very good quality information. I feel like I need to be taking notes sometimes.
Yeah, but even he realizes that, Nina. I mean, when in the post interview, we talked to him about it, and he goes, hey, I get going, I get a little long winded, but at the end, just like you said, he does have incredible insight across the whole ramification of LA soccer.
Yeah, look, I love Kevin. Very few people have covered the world's game in Los Angeles for as long as Kevin Baxter has. I mean, he's been around pretty much since the beginning. One of the godfathers of covering soccer in Los Angeles, if you will. So always fun to see what Kevin has to say.
Absolutely. But before we get into anything more about LA Galaxy, we got to pay the bills. McGrath Productions is the official match photography provider to your MASL team, the Empire Strykers. They service much of the OC and LA County as well as the Inland Empire. For all your commercial photography needs, visit McGrath-productions.com. That's MCGRATH-productions.com or McGrath_productions on Instagram. All right. LA Galaxy, we're heading down the road. They have had not the start of LAFC. It's been a little more bumpy for the defending champs.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about it. Kevin talked about it, that they haven't lost 2 games in a row at home all of last year. They haven't lost 3 since 2023. I mean, it's a long time, and the Galaxy fans have not suffered with this much early season injuries, this much early season can't put the ball in the back of the net. And he mentioned it. You got Pooch is out. He's going to be out until midsummer, and he is truly irreplaceable. I mean, they won the MLS Cup without him in the roster, but the reality is they were fired up. They were not going to lose that game, especially not with Pooch, who led that team the entire season. The bigger things are guys like Mickey Yamane. He's out. Lucas Sanabria, he's out with a broken collarbone. And I broke a collarbone a couple of years ago. You can't do anything for 3 weeks. You're on the deck. Then you can't do anything for another 3 weeks. And hopefully he avoids surgery. If he avoids surgery, he's looking at a 6-7 week minimum.
And look, I think it also stems from the curse, the burden of winning MLS Cup, right? All of those different bonuses and all of those different roster ramifications hit. And now all of a sudden you're losing guys like Dejan Joveljic, Jalen Neal, Marky Delgado, Gaston Brugman. I mean, we're talking about not just bit pieces here, bit players on their way to MLS Cup, but players who really helped drive that bus. Joveljic, talk about a straight line goal scorer. I mean, he's maybe as good as it gets as being a straight line goal scorer in Major League Soccer. And they lose their depth. They lose their character. And I think what they're trying to do is right now find their way. They brought in Christian Ramirez and unfortunately the injury to Sanabria, but I just don't think that they're as deep and as well constructed as they would like to be. Look, this is going to be a vastly different team in July once they get players. Obviously, Ricky Pooch is everything to that club, but this is also a club that's no longer going to sit around and wait. Bringing in Marco Royce at the deadline last year, I can't wait to see what they do this year, but they've got to get it going because this has not been the start that they thought it would be.
Yeah, one thing Kevin points out is the fact that Ricky Pooch is going to be very rested and coming in pretty fresh, almost like a DP would mid-season. So that'll be really good for them. Tough loss to Vancouver at home. Weird, catastrophic almost loss to San Diego at home for them to start the season, and then the loss away. But let's look forward. Let's look at what comes next. And I want to skip ahead to Champions Cup because they only have to score 2 to advance at home. That is not out of the realm of possibility for the Galaxy. And does that then change their momentum?
I think it has to. I think if they get healthy against Herradino, and they're going to get healthy this weekend against St. Louis, I think I think they win these next 2 games. Not magically. They've got the talent. They've got the people there. You mentioned it, JR. You lose some of these guys up front like Joveljic and some of these other guys that are 30 goals have magically left the team. But if they get to play St. Louis and they play them well and they beat them I think that leads into staying at home and beating the guys in Champions Cup.
Look, I think much like we just talked about with LAFC in that match against Seattle coming up, I think they kind of punt on that match against St. Louis and put all the chips in the middle against Herediano. I think that losing 1-0 on the road was maybe best case scenario for that club right now, because all they have to do, by the way, is get one at home and they're going to PKs, and you'd much rather have that situation at home. But you're absolutely right. If they can generate 2, what we saw is they held the ball for over 60+% of that match. They didn't generate a whole ton. And what worries me most about this Galaxy team right now is after they went down a goal, they were able to generate just 1 shot on target. You'd want them to play with a little bit more urgency and be able to execute a little bit more than they did after going down a goal. I get it. They needed a wake-up call. Herediano, they weren't trying to possess the ball. It was a typical counter match where they waited, and tried to possess and tried to counter. But the lack of response, I think, is what's toughest, right? When you have the Vancouver, the Eddie Ocampo tackle that should have been a red, that VAR comes back and says, hey, we missed that one. And yet after that, Galaxy's only able to put 1 shot on target. After the goal against Herediano, only able to put 1 shot on target. I'm just surprised at the lack of a response this early on. And I want to see guys, look, they need more from their frontline strikers, a little bit more from maybe a Christian Ramirez.
Yeah. Before we move on, I want to give JR a little PTSD. So one thing Kevin Baxter talks about is the fact that Galaxy landed after 10 hours of flying in Costa Rica, and then they had to drive 45 minutes outside of San Jose. Now, you did all the driving in Costa Rica. Let's give that a little more context and color. Can you explain what it's like to drive in Costa Rica, a 45-minute drive?
Listen, there are rural roads in Costa Rica that take you through people's backyards and chicken coops and other things that if you make a left instead of a right, sometimes things happen. And I imagine it's much more difficult on a giant team bus or something like that. So look, it's not as easy to get from, let's say, the center to the outside of Costa Rica. But that being said, there are worse problems to have than being stuck in traffic in a beautiful place like Costa Rica. So.
Absolutely. And with that, let's pay the bills once more. National Core, one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and a proud sponsor of your MASL team, the Empire Strykers. At National Core, they believe that soccer has the power to transform lives just like they do. They believe in building strong communities on and off the field. To learn more about National Core and their mission, go to nationalcore.org. Let's talk Strykers. Let's get into the MASL. As all the other seasons are launching and starting up, Strykers are winding down and setting their sights on playoffs. Boys, let's get into it.
Listen, I'm so hyped right now. I was on the call with Philly for that 8-0. It was bagel watch for the entire game, and we wound up getting it. I got to tell you, this team is so exciting right now. They got punched in the mouth by Chihuahua and then came right back and held them. I mean, 6-5 against Chihuahua, and then all that did was propel them on this 4-match winning streak, including, I know we don't play on aggregate, but Texas Outlaws 18-1 over the course of 2 games against Texas. What they're doing is they're getting right against the teams that, be perfectly honest, aren't very good. I know Baltimore's a good team, but if you can pick up those 3 points against the teams that you're supposed to, now when you have to run the gauntlet of 3 games against San Diego Sockers down the stretch of your final, 5 matches remaining, it's going to be tough for them to stay in that 5 seed, maybe even hold on to the 6 seed because of Milwaukee and Utica's schedule. But oh my goodness, they are peaking at the right time, and Coach Obasi has them doing everything they need to do down the stretch.
Absolutely. Let's look at that San Diego game a little bit more. Just yesterday, going on the road to San Diego, they're going to face them 2 more times before the end of the game. But a team that would normally be very challenging for Strykers, they're able to hold on, and unfortunately losing it just in the last minute. I think this is a good run of show for them.
Yeah, I think it's great. Talking about the 8-0 bageler, that is the first bagel of the MASL season this year, and that is huge. And in post game, I was on the field and talking to a few of the guys. The Strykers had the ball about 80% of that match, and when you don't let the other guys have the ball, it's really, really hard for them to score. And so talking with you, JR, after the match, talking with Philly. When you guys have the ball and you've got the goalkeepers are playing that sixth attacker level type of thing, not the true sixth attacker with the other jersey. But when you're doing that and setting up plays specifically for the goalkeeper, it makes a lot of difference as to whether or not you're going to be generating that type of offense.
Yeah, the tough part about that strategy, right, that Coach Onu Obasi has played all season. Now, he's gotten less adventurous with it towards the end of the season, and I think that's why they've been able to put together these string of results. But you live by that sword. Sometimes, unfortunately, you do die by that sword, and we saw what happened as San Diego was able to go up 7-5. That seventh goal was basically because of the formation that San Diego was able to take advantage of and catch the keeper far out. But what we're seeing, 6-5, I think it was against Chihuahua, 7-6 in this one against San Diego. Now they are a force to be reckoned with. They're keeping it close. That was at Front Wave Arena on the road. So I think if they can steal one of these last couple against San Diego, that's going to go a long way for them holding their spot on the table.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure. And even the sorry, Nina.
No,
sorry,
go.
and, producer Gunner just let us know that the San Diego announcers were praising the Strykers, saying it's the best coached Strykers team maybe they've ever seen. And that says something for what Coach Obasi has done coming into this season with the players that he's gotten and the structure of this team this year.
Look, I'll be perfectly honest. Coach Obasi has already coached in a much more pressure-packed game than anything that he's coached in the MASL before. Coaching in that TST final for $1 million. I mean, that is as pressure-packed as it gets. And what we've seen now, I mean, it's been an incredible turnaround. They've more than tripled their win total from last season. If Obasi isn't Coach of the Year in MASL, I don't know why they have the award.
Yeah, one thing I'm not too fond of is how different the standings are because of the games played. So there's so much movement that could happen in this final moment. But let's look ahead. Let's talk about Tacoma. Empire's going to go off to Tacoma this Saturday, and then they got a full 2 weeks of rest before that. But with this, it's the 5th time they're seeing Tacoma this season. Nick Pereira and Tacoma are a good team. They're currently sitting a little further out, 9th place, just outside of playoffs. So they definitely want to advance. This is going to be a huge game, and it's going to be challenging because Nick has had time to study Obasi.
Yeah, look, Tacoma is always a well-coached team. They're a force to be reckoned with. However, I think their road record has certainly doomed them this season. 0 wins on the road. So obviously, if they're at home, they're feeling a little bit better about things. But I look at their goal differential, and I look at being outscored by 31 goals over the course of the season, not yet even hitting that 100-goal mark 18 games into the season. And I know for people that are listening, indoor soccer is a different beast. They score 100, almost 200 goals for Chihuahua Savage this year. But Tacoma hasn't been able to get that engine revving. Now, granted, they've still got 6 games left in their season, but I think this is going to be one where what we've seen Empire be able to do at times is to actually possess, and take the air out of the ball instead of trying to go forward the entire time. And that's something they've been successful with against Tacoma from time to time this season.
Definitely. I mean, when you say take the air out of the ball, all I can think about is Deflategate. Had to do a Tom Brady reference with you on the pod.
Yeah, people are going to roll their eyes for sure. Look, I think, though, what you're saying really speaks to the unbalanced schedule. Chihuahua Savage and Empire Strykers have both played 20 matches each. When you're looking at right underneath Empire, you have Milwaukee Wave and Utica City on 17 matches. Now, we're equal with Milwaukee on 30 points, 2 points up on Utica City on 28, but they've got a potential 9 points in hand, and that could really make things difficult. But you're absolutely right. Tacoma, if they win this, that puts them just 7 points back with still another match in hand. What you have to do is you have to stamp out the hope with Tacoma, and that way you can pretty much seal a spot in the playoffs once we win this match against Tacoma.
Yeah, so tough on the road. I think, as we've said before, it's going to be a massive game, but then they've got a full 2 weeks off. What is up with that schedule? What are the boys supposed to do for 2 weeks? Spring break? That is not safe.
Well, I think what Obasi was talking to me about a little bit of post game, it's actually going to be okay for them because they're going to be able to design some more plays. They're going to be design plays for Marco. They're going to design plays for the goalkeepers for that sixth attacker grouping. So they're going to be able to sit and practice and rest, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, JR, they're 20, 22 games into this before they get the 11, 12 days off. But what's going to happen is they're going to be able to rest guys that are a little banged up. I mean, you're playing basically on a turf ice, right? And so when you get beat up, you get crashed into the boards, you're going to have a little nicks and bruises, and nobody's 100% healthy at this time of year.
Yeah, the one thing that does worry me, and producer Gunnar pointed this one out, they'll actually still have 2 games in hand against Empire, Tacoma Stars will, and their next 2. I mean, they're against Dallas and Texas, who combined have 23 points on the season. So if Tacoma wins, they'll have as many points as the 2 teams they're playing next. Could make a really, really interesting race. That'll put them, 1 point back, assuming that they take those 2 games. That final spot's going to be interesting.
Definitely. I think my ideal situation is Empire Strikers get into playoffs and they get Baltimore. I think we have a really good chance against Baltimore Blast if we can face them in the playoffs. But let's talk about playoffs because they're happening a little different this year. Everybody is going to be going down to Front Wave Arena in San Diego. So that creates almost, I would say, an advantage for San Diego immediately off the bat.
Yeah, advantage. How did they swing that? That's like the New York Yankees saying no matter who wins the World Series, we're hosting them at Yankee Stadium. Like, oh my goodness. We're talking about now, look, it's a brand new building. League wants to showcase it. I get it. It's beautiful. But come on, talk about the rich getting richer. That's a nice advantage for San Diego.
Yeah, and I don't like it at all. I think it's chances out the home playoffs. You work that hard to get a home playoff game, and you're playing in somebody else's barn. That's not fair.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how it's cost savings and how it's kind of nice to get everybody together in one atmosphere, very like Coachella Valley Invitational, but it's also cost prohibitive then to any of the home fans,
right?
Unless you're like, we're the closest. So we have the best shot of going down to San Diego, but even then you want to get a hotel room, all these other things. So it does make it a little more difficult for anyone to truly feel that home field advantage.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that it has to be San Diego of all places. I mean, look, there are plenty of beautiful buildings in MASL. Just they're showcasing their jewel right now. I firmly believe Toyota Arena, one of the nicest places to play in the entire league. Look, let's get it down there then next year. And if it becomes a round robin thing, sure, I guess it's okay, right? But let's do it at Toyota Arena next year. Come on, MASL.
All right. And with that, we do have to say goodbye to the scarf, J.R. Liebert. Jay, any final thoughts or words for everyone?
Listen, it's soccer season in LA. We got all these great teams to talk about. Everything is in full swing with Angel City kicking off shortly as well. You got OCSC, LAFC 2, Ventura County FC. Everybody's getting ready to go. It's an embarrassment of riches here in the Los Angeles area, and I'm just so happy to be able to talk about it. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Yes. J.R. Liebert, host of Defenders of the Bank podcast, and of course, a commentator analyst on Golasso Network for the Empire Strikers. Thank you for spending time with us today. We'll see you again soon. I'm sure you'll be a regular fixture on here with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, Tim. Thanks.
Thanks, JR. See you, buddy.
So with that, Kevin Baxter already talked a lot about Angel City. We'll give you a little more information next week as we tease the home opener, which will be on Saturday, March 16th against the Wave at home. It'll be the return of Didi Herchich, Savannah McCaskill, and Becky Tweed. So really excited to dig into that more next week. But Tim, let's go to OCSC. What is good?
Yeah, so Orange County has had a lot going on. We've had Coach on the past week or two, and he said there was going to be some movement. Well, there's definitely been movement. Thomas Among, who's been part of Orange County for the past couple of seasons, has moved on. He is not going to be with the team this season. He was injured a fair amount over his term at Orange County, but he has moved on to New Mexico United. That was announced just 2 days ago. And that's a big move because it allows guys like me and Liam that's coming in and to get a lot more minutes, a lot more play. And you're going to have guys like Ethan Zubak come, he's coming back and he's going to be the lead striker. And then you got Mohamedou. Sorry, Mohamedou. I'm screwing up your name completely. Just terrible. Mr. War is coming in and he's going to lead the strikers up of that group. And then just yesterday, because Colin Shuttler was the only goalkeeper on the roster. They have signed Ket Codano for the upcoming season. And if you're local here to North Orange County, you know this name well because he did play for Cal State Fullerton. He was Big West goalkeeper of the year, and he was been first team All Big West. He is out of Kobe, Japan. And Nina, this guy is going to be great for Orange County. He's going to get a bunch of minutes. He's going to back up Colin. And I think it's going to be a very good tandem for Orange County this coming season.
Yeah, that sounds like a powerhouse back line, as I will call it from now on. It's not the back line, it's the back line.
Right. And they have had some guys leave, like Owen Lamb has left and some of these other guys have left. But they have really, really done a nice job structuring the back line, the fullbacks, the midfield. And I believe that Orange County is going to have a really, really strong season. You know, the fans are getting into it. There's still season seats left, but expect there to be several sellouts down at Championship Stadium in Irvine, including this weekend. This weekend's game is almost completely sold out. It is Saturday night against Oakland Roots at 7 p.m. at the Champ. And with the continued success of Orange County and bigger sponsors coming in, there's now a big sponsor in Michelob Ultra has now being one of the sponsors of the greatest party in Orange County soccer. It's going to be really, really fun to be at the Champ this weekend. I've got my media pass, but I think I'm going to be sitting down in the supporter section having a Frosty and screaming and yelling the whole game, Nina.
Absolutely. Tuck that pass away, put it in your back pocket and have a good time, you know, especially with the new beer sponsor. You know, Orange County's doing it right. I'm sorry. They had the Jameson Cup and now they have a beer sponsor. I'm all in on it. It is a good time and I cannot wait to see what they do this season, continuing to make A+ moves in the off season. It's awesome.
It's great. And like you said, you know, get down there, get in the seats. The food's great too. They're upgrading the food options. They're going to have some really good stuff there. And, you know, they always have these beer fests as well. So enjoy, have a fun time down in Orange County. And, you know, I'll host you in Philly and Panda one day down there.
Oh, that's going to be trouble. Definitely need a hotel room for that one.
You bet. Absolutely. Take Omnitransit if they'll go that far.
There you go. Shout out to our sponsors.
Yep. That sums up Orange County for us today. And again, Orange County is looking good this year.
All right. Now let's move over to Best 11. Let's look around LA. All right, Tim, let's take a look around LA. Best 11, the best 11 players this week in Greater Los Angeles. Starting in goal, Hugo Lloris for LAFC. Defenders, Sergey Palencia for LAFC, Ryan Hollingshead for LAFC, and Robert Palmer for Empire Strykers. In the midfield, another Timmy, but Timmy Tillman for LAFC, Mark Delgado, LAFC, Igor Jesus, LAFC, Justin Stinson, Empire Strykers, Marco Fabian, Empire Strykers, and then forwards, Denny Buwanga for LAFC and Leonardo Espinosa for Empire. I'm a huge fan of this one. I think we crushed it. I think this is the best 11 of all time.
Well, yeah, because there's no Galaxy people on it. That's why. Once again, the goose egg 2 weeks in a row.
I might be a little biased.
But that's okay. You know, the one that I'm you know, I always got to root for my fellow Timmies. But the one that really makes me upset is Marky Delgado. He goes down to LAFC. He's been on the list twice. It just makes me sad that he went to where he's actually going to get way more playing time. He's going to play great. And so while I hate to see it say LAFC behind his name, I do like the fact that he's just crushing it for LAFC.
Definitely. And I want to talk about these defenders because this is what strikes me most in the best 11. Ryan Hollingshead with the goal for LAFC in that defeat over NYCFC, and Robert Palmer doing absolutely incredible things. He had 2 assists in San Diego. So we're seeing our defenses on this best 11 truly win.
And that's exactly what we're looking at and what you want from your defenders, especially some of the guys like Berto, all right, Robert Palmer. Getting a couple of assists. He's had a couple of great goals this season as well. And to put him in this best 11 up with the LAFC guys, I think it's justified. I think it's beautiful, and I love it.
Yep. And then, Justin Stinson and Marco Fabian, the two all-stars from Empire Strikers, both continuing to have amazing outputs on the season, definitely leaning into them. But let's talk forwards, because you got two forwards, an LAFC player and an Empire Strikers player. Denny Bouanga taking home that captain role for his performance and his goals scored. We talked about it earlier. He's heating up. He's took his time. It reminds me, I had a player that wouldn't tie their cleats until 10 minutes into the game. He just like, not yet.
Yep.
Denny's like, give me a minute. I'll be there.
Yep. And I like the fact that once he does heat up, then he's on fire. And I'm going to go back to the Justin Stinson goal. He did this umbrella goal. And if you haven't seen this goal, you got to go Google this thing. You got to look it up on YouTube, because the umbrella goal that he takes just puts the guy in the popcorn machine, puts it far post is great. But again, Denny Bouanga is getting braces. Now LAFC is going to start putting the wood to people over the next few games with Denny heating up.
Yeah, Denny heating up, and joining in at LAFC are going to be a couple more players to score. But I think it's defense that's winning these things, with the way Obasi plays it, where the keeper is scoring and everyone's pushing forward above that halfway mark. And then LAFC really relying heavily on that strong defensive line in order to make it through and pull out the wins. I know I gave captain to Denny Bouanga. I know I did. But if I had to give a captain slot to an entire position, it would be defense.
I would have as well. I would have given it to Palencia, in my opinion. But we can argue about these things, and that's what makes them fun. So with that, that's LA's best 11. Nina, take us home.
All right, you've joined us. We are Soccer in 60, 1490 AM and 98.1 FM in much of the Inland Empire, the KMET app, KMET1490am.com. Of course, always live on the Empire Strikers Instagram and YouTube, and on demand on all major podcast platforms. Just search for Soccer in 60. Tim, it's always fun spending time with you, buddy. I really appreciate you, and I have so much fun talking footy.
I'd love it too, Nina. And it's been a great show. We had JR on. We had a great interview with Kevin Baxter. Nina, I appreciate you spending a lot of time with me as well.
That's it. Thanks for joining us today on Soccer in 60.